Okay, quickie update. This is the Fender mounting bracket that goes on the lower end of the tub. I have cleaned it up, and it has enough perimeter rust. This is too big to sink into a vat of evapor rust. I'm going to do the full core press and do the electrolysis on this and get rid of all of the rust and repaint it black and then put it back on. This will probably soak for 3 days in the electrolysis bath, is my guess, but we'll see. Anyway, in the meantime, we've had a couple of issues. One, can you see that? That bolt snapped off in that nut, and that bolt, there's my light, that bolt is there. Come on, focus. So that bolt has snapped off. It might still be long enough to use. I haven't looked on the inside of the tub to see if there's a bolt or if that's a welded on stud or whatever. But there might be enough there to get a purchase and reconnect without having to get drastic. And I need more light. I'll be right back. Are we focused? Okay. Let's have a little movie fun here. Aziz, light! Okay. The other problem that we had is that the two bottom bolts for that mounting bracket snapped off, which is not great, because those nuts, there's no access to the back end of those nuts, and those are really, they're not nutserts literally, but this is sheet metal, right? So whatever on the back end, I don't think it's a full-blown nut. I think it's a nutsert-like. And so getting these bolts out and preserving the threads, I haven't come up with a smart solution for that yet. I'm doing some research to see what various ideas I can come up with, either YouTube or the interweb, to try and get those out. So I'm not going to rush particularly until I'm satisfied that I've got a strategy that's worth trying. There are a couple things that I've thought of already, which is to not or try to reverse them out, but maybe try to get them to turn inward, assuming that they are rusted on the end that we can't see, and that it might be easier to get them out if we just kind of try to find a way to screw the remnants of these bolts inward, and just get them to pop out the back end, so to speak, or just do the old-fashioned, just drill it out. Like I said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do here, but that one way or another, those two suckers have to come out. So I fear that that was going to take me some time. Also, we do have some corrosion forming here. Fortunately, it's in the early stages. There's no rot, and so we'll certainly treat that, and that is old treated. I mentioned it on the last video for the driver's side that the spot welds in particularly seem to rust first. So I put that treatment on a couple of years ago, and I think I'm going to enhance that treatment while I deal with that area of corrosion. Put a wire wheel to this, and there's very little to be concerned about here, which is good. And so that's it. And the other thing that I still have to deal with is the rat's nest. All of that is auxiliary, except for the big wiring harness, which it goes to the main fuse box. All of that little wire stuff is all part of the auxiliary lighting on the car. So I've got roof lights, I've got mid lights, and I've got the fog lights, and they are all wired one way or the other through this rat's nest. Some of this stuff I did do work on, but was never really satisfied with it. And the work that I did was basically to add the proper relays so that there was no risk of fire inside the chassis if something shorted out or whatever. So that I did do, but obviously this is a mess, and I need to straighten it up and neaten it up a bit and get it out of the way. So I'm going to do that too. And so, you know, we still got plenty to do before the new Fender goes back on, and one step at a time, right? So that's it for this update. See you later. Aziz, go to sleep. Bye. Okay, a quickie on electrolysis. So here's my electrolysis bucket. I've got regular plain ordinary tap water and baking soda, 2-3 tablespoons, something like that. There's no scientific measurement that I know of in terms of amount of baking soda per gallon of water or whatever. So I've got two, I don't think electrodes are the right word, but I've got 2 steel bars, which hopefully are the same material as our part. That's very important, that whatever your waste metal is the same material as the metal that you're trying to derust. And I put in 2 just for effectiveness. Again, no science here. I figure a little bit more is better. But we'll see. So the next step is to suspend the part. This is going to be a tight fit. Okay, well, a little bit is sticking out of the water, and that is perfectly fine since that side is not rusted. So the next step is to hook up our battery charger. So we have a regular old battery charger here, and we're going to set this up for manual charge at 2 amps continuous. Next, black or ground goes to the part itself. Make sure you've got a good connection. And the red goes to these, I don't know which is which, anode. One side is the anode, one side is the cathode. Look it up. And then we plug in our part and let the chemistry happen. So this thing is going to be in here for a while. I am trying something that I haven't tried before, which is that there's a small bracket that I showed in previous updates that was also rusted. I only have 2 brackets to derust. It's the small bracket and this large bracket. And so I have attached the smaller bracket. I don't know if you can see it under the water, but there's a little bit of copper. And so that's basically it. We were already seeing bubbles, which is a good sign. Let's see if we can... I don't know how well you can see those bubbles where you zoom. Oh yeah, that's good. So that's what you should see. The electrolysis bath is now doing its work. Where are you? There you are. The electrolysis bath is doing its work, and it will take some time. It's not instantaneous. There is some heavy rust on this part. So, am I losing focus? So I'm going to leave this thing in for probably 3 days, perhaps 4, although I will check it from time to time. Another thing to be careful of is that the sacrificial metal rods cannot touch the part that you're trying to derust. Otherwise, it would basically present a dead short, and you would not get any electrolysis action. So that's very important that the sacrificial rods are not touching the part. And here we have a pretty tight clearance, but there's no touching, so we should be fine. And the thing, it will do its thing. And so now we wait. And so that's it. Onward to the next milestone. See ya. Okay, I just wanted to show you the before and after from an electrolysis perspective. So this is the lower fender mounting bracket that bolts onto the tub of the car and supports the fender at the bottom at where the fender and the tub meet. And I dropped this in the electrolysis bath to remove the rust. And this is the after. Now, it's not quite that the part comes out like this, because this is after I have sanded it, but also sometimes the paint will come off during electrolysis and sometimes it won't. In this particular case, it didn't for the most part. Some of it did, but most of it didn't. So I removed all of the paint with a chemical paint stripper. Messy business, and it didn't, you know, there are traces of primer you can see here, and a little bit of yellow here and there, but you know, it's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be in good repainting condition, which it is. So this is the aftermath. So this is out of the electrolysis, all the rust removed, and the paint then stripped, and then I went over this entire part with 100 grit sandpaper, and before I did the sandpapering, I also washed this part, soap and water, dish soap and whatnot, and then dried it off by hand. It is now ready for paint. And for this bracket, just as the driver's side bracket, I will use the Eastwood Platinum Rust Encapsulator, and we'll use the Eastwood Top Coat, or that's not what they call it. That's POR calls their product Top Coat. Eastwood calls it Chassis Black, I think. So 2 coats of the Eastwood Rust Preventer product, the Platinum Rust Preventer, and then at least 2 coats of the black finish. And I'll show you what it looks like after the Rust Preventer, because that's got a silver color, and then the black, which takes at least 2 passes and sometimes 3 before the silver is completely covered. But that's it. I just wanted to show you what this part looks like without its paint and after coming out of the bath. The most important part is that there's no more rust on the part, at least that I can see. And we'll go from there. So we paint, and then we go back over here, and beyond our little rat's nest of wires here, down there is where that bracket bolts back on. And that's another problem right there that I have to deal with, which is that, where are we here? Yeah. Back in. That bolt snapped off. There's probably enough to put the nut back on it, but I am going to take a Dremel tool and I am going to take the welds off that, where are you? Off that stud on the inside of the tub, and replace that with a longer stainless steel bolt. So that'll be another little adventure. I won't be able to film that. There's just not enough room inside the car. But I will certainly show you the aftermath. Where are you? There you are. So that's the deal. All right, on to the next milestone. See ya. Okay, you happy Jeeper people. I just wanted to show you what this mounting bracket, the fender mounting bracket, looks like after I put the Eastwood Platinum rust encapsulator on it. So it is all done. 2 coats of the encapsulator. It's not perfect. There are a few defects, like I got a bit of a buildup of paint over here, which I'll probably take a razor blade or a little bit of sandpaper and knock that down. But nobody's ever going to see this part, so I'm not really worried about perfection. The next step here is to paint the part with the chassis black. It's going to take at least 2 coats, probably 3, and I'll show you that progression as we go, because this stuff does bleed through. That stuff kind of tends to spread around. Another footnote that I found in using the chassis black to cover this silver colored rust encapsulator is that if you don't wait long enough between coats of this stuff, what will happen is that when you put the second coat on, it will kind of liquefy, if you will, the first coat, so that again you wind up just moving the paint around rather than getting the second coat to stick, if you will. So you do need to allow for sufficient time for the first coat to harden up, so that doesn't happen to you. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to follow the same general strategy, which is that we're going to paint the exterior of the bracket first, and then once that gets its 2 or 3 coats and it looks reasonable, then we'll do the inside. And of course that's after it's no longer tacky or anything like that, because when you're painting, you gotta kind of stick your hands through these openings and whatnot to get at all the nooks and crannies of this fairly complicated shape. So when you're doing inside to outside or outside to inside, you definitely want to wait until the paint has hardened enough so that you don't wind up with it all over your hands or your gloves or whatever, and affecting the finish. So that's the next step. We're gonna do the chassis black coat 1, which I'll show you what it looks like. It's not you know, super attractive, but it's one step in the process. And second coat, third coat, and then we're gonna let it cure for at least a few days, up to a week. Really, I would prefer to wait a week, but I need this car, so I'm not sure if I will have the fortitude to delay my needs that long, but my other car's got to go in the shop, and I need a set of wheels to drive around in, and so I certainly don't want to rent a car when I've got a second car that I could use. So anyway, that's it. Next update coming soon. See you. Bye. Okay, we're back with a quickie. I just wanted to show you what this bracket looks like once the Eastwood Platinum Rust encapsulator has been applied. There's 2 coats on here. The application isn't perfect. There are little paint runs and whatever, but this is not a visible part. So maybe I'll do something about it. The couple runs, maybe I won't. But the next step is to put the chassis black on. It'll probably take 3 coats is my guess, maybe 2. We will, that's the next step. So I guess that's it. I just wanted you to get to see what it looked like before the black went on. And I'll show you the first coat and then the second coat, and we'll see how well we go. One thing I do want to point out is that when you use this stuff, you do have to wait a sufficient amount of time between the first coat and the second coat, because if you put the second coat on too quick, it has a tendency to liquefy the first coat so that you wind up kind of moving around both, and so you don't really get coverage. So keep that in mind if you choose to go this route. So anyway, so the next step is to put on our first coat of chassis black, and then I'll show you what that looks like. See ya. Okay, we're back. That's coat number 1. You can see there's not full coverage. It's streaky. You can see the silver coming through. And it's been drying for several hours, but it still feels slightly tacky, so I'm going to just let it sit and continue to cure. It is a little bit humid, so not any special rush to move this along, so we'll wait patiently for the paint to get to the point where I feel comfortable take a shot at the second coat. And we'll put the second coat on and we'll see how that looks, and if it covers well, then we'll move to the interior and paint that up, and 2 coats on the interior as well, and then we will be done. I still don't think that 2 coats are going to cut it here, and then it'll probably wind up being a third, and if that's the case, that's okay. The objective here is to get this part to a point where it will be many years before I need to be concerned about rust. So anyway, I'll show you what it looks like after I get the second coat on, whenever that is. Bye for now. Okay, back once more for an intermediate update. We have our 2 coats on. It's not perfect. There are some runs. The chassis black Eastwood is quite thin, and so it does tend to run, and but again, this part is going to be completely concealed, and the object here is to try and keep the rust monster at bay. So I'm not looking for perfection here. I'm just looking for reasonably good protection from rust. And we will see on the long term if Eastwood lets me down or not. But that's it. So I did manage to get good coverage with 2 coats. I did think that I was going to need a third, but it turns out that I didn't. So now we can move on to painting the chassis black onto the inner portion of this, which is a little bit more challenging to do, and I may do maybe the center here and one side at a time, just because the handling is quite awkward on this complicated shape. So it takes as long as it takes. We'll do what we can to get the job done as right as we possibly can under the circumstances. So that's it, and I'll give you another update at an appropriate time. See you, bye. Okay, another quickie update. I've now applied the chassis black, Eastwood chassis black, to the inner portions of this bracket, and it's just one coat, and you probably can't see from where you're sitting, but it's plenty streaky, and second coat needed is assured. But we might get away with just 2 coats, so we'll see. Anyway, just wanted to show you what it looked like after I put on 1 coat. Onward and upward. We have to let this dry for a while. Okay, another quickie update. I have rewired the auxiliary lighting wiring rat's nest so that it is a little bit more organized and a little bit easier to access. It's not perfect. Probably is not up to expert automotive wiring standards, but I don't claim to be an expert at automotive wiring standards. This is certainly far better than what I had. So I've got 3 circuits down here and 3 relays. The middle relay is for the roof lights. The left-hand relay is for the mid lights at the windshield. And this right-hand relay is for the fog lights. And then I have a negative bus bar, and I have a positive bus bar. And each light, there are currently 6 on the truck, or car rather, each light is fused with a traditional style fuse holder. If I ever find an aftermarket auxiliary fuse box that I like, I may redo this all yet again. I'm not sure about the life expectancy of these fuses relative to the engine compartment heat. We're going to find out as we go whether or not that's going to be an issue. But I've already tested this because the battery's out of the car. I have run a couple of wires up to the termination points from the battery just to make sure that I didn't screw anything up when I redid all of this, and the good news is that the lights all work. So I think, you know, this was a good project while we had unfettered access to this area. I still got a few things left to do. I'm not sure if I'm going to leave these wires the way they are, or shorten them up and maybe bring them down here, or just leave them but put them in some what is it called, loom, this stuff, and let them wrap around. I'll decide that when I put the bracket back on, the lower fender mounting bracket. We'll see which way works best. So I do want to put a wire tie down here just to keep those wires close to the firewall, and so there is that. But other than that, that is my effort to seal all of, or not seal, to redo all of the wiring, to neaten it up, organize it a little bit better. I do want to get a white Sharpie and just mark each one of these circuits, because eventually I'll forget what goes to where, and that's it. So there are covers for both of these. I don't really like the covers that much because they seem to not have that much of a grip. So I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So I still have to get the primary wires for the positive lead and for the ground run. First I have to acquire those wires. I think I'm going to use number 8 wire, or either number 8 or number 6. I think 6 is too heavy. That'll probably wind up being number 8. I think number 10 is a little bit too light. If I recall correctly, these are 160 amp bus bars. So I think that I've got adequate coverage here because right now, as I mentioned, I only have 6 lights. And perhaps you can see that there's only 2 lights on the roof rack right now. This is because when I first bought the Jeep, there were, I think, 6-inch KC lights, but they were all burned out, and they were sealed, so you couldn't replace the bulb. So I removed them, and I would like to fill out that roof rack with these smaller 4-inch lights, but those lights are pretty expensive, so that's been a little bit down on the list of priorities in terms of the other things that needed to be done to keep this car rolling safely. So that I will get to that in due course. But now it looks much neater, much more organized, even if it's not perfect. And not perfect is, you know, a few too many splices on these short wires here. And that's partly because of the nature of the fuse holders, and partly that the nature of what I needed in terms of lengths of wire. So that's it for that progress report, and I will swing around here and show you that. Let me grab my trouble light here. I'm gonna need to illuminate. Inside the cab, I have put the top coat, 2 coats of the chassis black Eastwood product, and there are a couple little spots here that the black did not want to cover, which I think is kind of odd, because I went over all of this with a lacquer thinner before I applied it, and I didn't have any issues with the platinum rust encapsulator going down, but there seem to be a couple of spots where the black chassis black did not like what it was trying to lay on top of, but you know, it kind of is what it is. I mean, it's under the carpet, nobody's going to see it. I may try to touch those up a little bit, because the whole idea behind putting this chassis black on was to try to preserve the work that I've done here as long as possible before the rust starts to reform. So this is now my second effort. Right shortly after I bought the car, I found there was rust on the bottom of the pan of the tub, and I took more extraordinary means back then, where I literally ground off all of the rust down to bare metal, and then repainted with I think it was VHT chassis paint, and I used a different Eastwood rust encapsulator product that just didn't last. So somewhere in the 3 or 4 year mark, the rust started to reform. I'd like to keep the rust away for a little bit longer than that, because it's a pain in the ass to go through this. So we'll see. We'll see what this looks like in a year, because every year I do a rust hunt to see what the deal is. So anyway, so that's where we are. And in terms of getting ready to put the fender back on, we're almost there. The next thing that I have to do is down here, which I mentioned in an earlier update snippet, where there are 2 bolts that have snapped off inside the torque box, and I need to get both of those bolts out, and that's what I'm going to be working on today. Hopefully it will work. I haven't had much luck with bolt removal, so there's a first time for success for everything, and hopefully that first time is here, because if those bolts don't come out, then I may have a larger problem. Anyway, so that's where we're gonna head to next. That's where I'm going to head to next. I keep saying we. What is up with that? Anyway, going to get the fuse box for the car out of the way here so I can work under here, and then get down on the ground and start working. But I'm going to wait a little while because it's still a little chilly in the garage. So I've got the space heater over here and the space heater over here, warming the garage up a bit so it's comfortable to work in here. And then we're going to get to work. So getting closer, getting a lot closer. I don't think that this weekend, it's a Sunday currently, is going to be the day for putting the fender on, but I'm pretty sure that I'll be ready for the fender by next weekend. So I'll update you further. See ya. Bye.